You can't leave. Join us.
Don't stay! It's watching! You can't leave! Join us!
The wind screamed through the steel skeleton of the radar station, its howl like the groaning of a wounded animal. The metal walls trembled under its pressure, and I felt the hairs on the back of my neck rise. It had been hours since the last signal, hours since anyone had spoken to me, but something had changed. The eerie stillness of the station now felt wrong, like the air itself was holding its breath. I pulled my jacket tighter around me, the cold creeping into my bones, despite the warmth of the station's heat running at full blast. The monitor flickered again, the solitary green on the screen standing still, an anomaly I hadn't noticed before. Suddenly, a sharp crack echoed from the dark hallway behind me. It wasn't the wind. It was a footstep. I spun around, heart pounding, the hairs on my arms standing straight as if some unseen hand had just brushed against my skin. I was alone, had to be. The isolation was part of the job. There were no visitors, no calls, just the endless stretch of snow outside and the humming of machinery. But now, I wasn't so sure. I took a step forward, hesitating. The corridor seemed to stretch, as though something was waiting there in the shadows. Then came the whisper, so faint, I wasn't sure if it was real. Get out. The cold air inside the radar station felt thick, unnatural, as though it was pressing in on me from all sides. The low hum of the machinery should have been comforting, a reminder that I wasn't entirely alone out here, but it only made the silence heavier, more oppressive. I had been here for 3 days, alone in this remote outpost, and it was starting to feel like a lifetime. The kind of place where time loses its meaning, and the world outside seems like a distant memory. The station had been abandoned once before, they told me. A failed project, a lost cause, whatever the reason, they kept it running as a precaution. Just in case. A relic from the Cold War. They said there was nothing to worry about, that the machinery still worked fine. But when you're the only one stationed here, the only one who can hear the soft creaks of the walls and the constant whirring of the radar as it scans the frozen horizon, you start to wonder how long it's been since anyone really cared. I sat at the monitor, staring at the single green that blinked in and out of existence on the radar screen. It hadn't moved in hours, but I watched it anyway. Part of me expected it to vanish, to be swallowed up by the surrounding white noise of static. But it never did. It stayed, almost mocking me. The stillness outside was suffocating. I could see the endless stretch of snow through the thick glass windows, the white landscape merging with the gray sky above. There was nothing out there, nothing except the wind and the occasional shriek of an animal, lost in the cold. There had been no visitors, no radio transmissions, no communications of any kind since I arrived. It was supposed to be a brief, isolated assignment, just one night in this forgotten outpost, then I could head back to the real world. Or so I had thought. The lights flickered above me, briefly plunging the room into darkness before they snapped back to life. It wasn't the first time. I tried to shake off the unease that crawled up my spine, but it lingered like the cold. I glanced at the clock. 3:17 a.m. Everything was fine. Everything was fine. But then I heard it. A soft thump, far off down the corridor. At first, I told myself it was just the wind, or maybe a shift in the building. But the sound came again, louder this time, followed by a metallic scrape. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. I told myself it was just the building settling, that the old equipment could make strange noises after years of neglect. But the rational explanations didn't come as easily this time. The air felt thicker, heavier, as if the entire station was holding its breath. I stood up, a cold sweat breaking out along my neck, and grabbed the flashlight off the desk. My footsteps echoed through the empty halls as I made my way toward the noise. The corridor stretched on forever, its long, narrow passage broken only by doorways to rooms filled with forgotten machinery. My flashlight flickered as I walked, and the beam of light cut through the dark, casting long, distorted shadows on the walls. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end, my pulse pounding in my ears. "Hello," I called out, my voice sounding too loud in the oppressive silence. There was no answer. I turned a corner and froze. The door to the storage room was wide open, but I hadn't opened it. I would have remembered. The door should have been locked, just like all the others. My heart skipped a beat as I stepped closer, the cold from the hallway wrapping itself around me like a vice. Inside the room, the equipment was just as I left it, old, rusted, and used. But there, on the floor, was something I hadn't seen before. A piece of paper, torn and crumpled, sat in the middle of the room. I bent down to pick it up, my fingers trembling as I unfolded it. It was a note, written in smudged ink, the handwriting jagged and hurried. "They're watching. Don't stay. It won't stop. Leave before it's too late." I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. My stomach churned, and for the first time since I arrived, I felt a gnawing sense of dread. The words felt like a warning, something dark and unsettling that had been left behind, as if the station itself was trying to speak to me. I crumpled the note in my hand and stood up, scanning the room once more. The shadows seemed to shift, moving just outside my line of sight. "Just the wind," I whispered to myself, though my voice cracked as the words left my mouth. As I turned to leave, I heard it again, a footstep. This time it was closer, just behind me, like someone was standing in the doorway, watching me. I spun around, the flashlight beam cutting through the air, but there was no one there. The room was empty. I stood frozen, my breath shallow, every muscle in my body tense. My heart raced, and the hairs on my arms stood straight. The chill wasn't just in the air anymore. It was inside me, deep in my bones. The silence stretched unbroken until a voice, soft, like the rustle of wind through leaves, whispered in my ear. "Get out." I turned, but again there was nothing. No one. Only the walls and the endless, creeping sense that something was waiting. Something was watching. I backed out of the room, my mind spinning. I stumbled toward the hallway, each step heavier than the last. The door slammed shut behind me with a sound like a clap of thunder, and I jumped, my heart pounding in my chest. The station seemed to groan under some unseen weight, and the hum of the machinery seemed louder now, more oppressive. I had to leave. I had to get out. But I couldn't shake the feeling that no matter where I went, it would follow. The night after hearing the voice, the radar station felt colder, its silence heavier, as if the building itself had shifted. I couldn't sleep. I kept pacing the cramped quarters, the faint hum of the machinery a constant reminder that I was still here, still alone in this forgotten place. I had tried to rationalize it. Perhaps I had imagined the voice. The note could have been left by someone else. Maybe a prank, or a warning from the past. The station was old, the equipment aged and faulty. It was easy to jump to conclusions when you were alone and cut off from the world. But the unease refused to let me go. Every shadow in the corner of my eye, every creak of the floorboards under my feet, felt like a message. Something was wrong, and I couldn't ignore it. It didn't help that the communication system was down. No radio calls. No updates from the outside world. The isolation was suffocating. It was as though the radar station had become its own universe, a place removed from time and reality, and I was simply a guest waiting for something to happen. I spent the rest of the night scanning the radar screen, watching the lone green dot pulse on the monitor. Each time the flicker of static interrupted the display, my heart skipped a beat. My eyes grew heavy from exhaustion, but the feeling of being watched kept me alert. The radar kept scanning the endless white expanse outside, but what it saw, I didn't know. There was nothing beyond the station's walls, only snow and ice. By morning, I was beginning to question my sanity. The note, the voice, were they just fragments of a mind on the edge, created by the pressure of isolation? Or was there something here, something real, something waiting? I woke to a strange sensation, like the air had shifted. The machines still hummed, but there was a dissonance to them now, a flicker in the light. I could hear the wind outside, but it was no longer the familiar howl I had grown used to. It sounded almost human. faint, whimpering cries mixing with the screeching gusts. It unnerved me, but I had to shake it off. I opened the dusty file cabinet in the back of the office, searching for something to distract myself. Old reports and maintenance logs were piled inside, most of them dated back to the 70s. I shuffled through the papers, trying to make sense of the history of the station, hoping to find something that could explain what was happening to me. Then I found it, a thick folder marked Abandonment Report. The station had been shut down once, briefly, after a series of equipment malfunctions. But the official reports only mentioned mechanical issues, nothing else. No reason for the sudden shutdown. There was a mysterious line, though, at the end of the report that caught my attention. Unexplained events observed after the final shift. Staff unaccounted for. That was it. That was the only clue. I turned the page, and a series of grainy black and white photos fell out. The first showed the station in full operation, a busy hub of activity. But the second photo, taken after the shutdown, was unsettling. It was of the interior. The control room, the radar equipment, and the air around it. The shadows were stretched unnaturally long, as if the light had been bent. The faintest figure lingered in the corner of the frame, barely visible but unmistakable. I slammed the folder shut, my hand shaking. There it was. There was something here, something the old reports wouldn't tell me. And I was starting to believe it wasn't mechanical failure. Later that afternoon, I decided to venture outside. I needed air, needed to break free from the confines of the station for just a moment. The wind had died down, leaving the world eerily still. I made my way toward the small outbuilding near the station, a storage shed of some kind. As I rounded the corner, I saw something that sent a cold shiver down my spine. Footprints in the snow, deep, heavy, and fresh. No one should have been out here. The last time I checked, no one else had arrived. I followed the prints, my breath quickening as they led me toward the edge of the forest. I was about to step into the woods when I saw them. Two figures standing in the distance, just beyond the trees. I couldn't make out their faces, but I knew they saw me. Their posture was stiff, unnatural. I called out, but they didn't respond. Instead, they turned and walked deeper into the woods, their movements jerky, like marionettes controlled by unseen strings. I hesitated for a moment, then turned back toward the station. The footsteps had vanished as quickly as they appeared. When I got back to the station, I noticed something new, a handwritten note taped to the door. The message was brief, but it made my stomach drop. It watches. You're not alone. Leave while you still can. I didn't know who had written it, but my pulse hammered in my ears. I rushed inside, locking the door behind me. The station felt colder now, the walls pressing in tighter with every breath. The nights grew longer. I could feel myself losing touch with reality. My mind was playing tricks on me. Wasn't it? I kept hearing whispers just beyond my hearing, fleeting voices that seemed to echo in the walls. The shadows grew thicker, like they had substance, like they were reaching for me. I tried to call for help again, but the radio only hissed back at me in static, mocking me with its silence. Then, one night, it all came to a head. I was sitting in the control room, staring at the radar screen, when the blip on the monitor shifted. It wasn't supposed to move like that. The green dot began to grow, expanding, pulsating, until it was a dark mass of distortion. Then, it disappeared. I looked up at the wall, and my breath caught in my throat. The dark, twisted figure stood in the doorway, its eyes glowing red, its form shifting and writhing like liquid shadow. It didn't move, but I could feel it. Its presence was a weight in the air. Leave. The whisper came again, more forceful this time, like a command. I tried to scream, but no sound escaped. My body wouldn't move. My legs were locked in place as though the floor beneath me had turned to stone. And then the lights flickered, and everything went black. I woke up hours later in a cold sweat, the station eerily silent once again. But I knew I couldn't stay any longer. I had to get out. Whatever it was, whatever had happened here, I couldn't face it alone anymore. I grabbed my things and made my way to the front door. But before I could reach it, the radio came to life. A voice crackled through the static, faint but unmistakable. You can't leave. It knows you now. You are part of it. The door creaked open on its own. A shadow shifted inside the doorway, but I couldn't see what it was. All I knew was that whatever had been haunting the station wasn't just some anomaly of machinery. It was alive, a presence that had been waiting for someone to come. Someone like me. The door slammed shut behind me, and I felt the breath knocked from my lungs. The once familiar walls of the radar station now felt foreign, alien. The cold air pressed in on me from all sides, and for the first time since I arrived, I realized how small I was, how fragile, in the face of whatever was happening here. The lights flickered once more, casting erratic shadows that danced across the room like twisted figures, flitting in and out of existence. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat sounding like a drum, as though it was the only sound that still mattered in the suffocating silence. The hum of the radar was no longer comforting. It was a predator's growl, something dark and menacing, growing louder with each passing second. I stumbled back toward the control room, instinctively drawn to the flickering monitor. The green dot that had once been so stable was now a pulsating mass, growing, expanding, undulating like some living thing. It didn't make sense, but nothing did anymore. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, trying to make sense of the data, trying to control something, anything, as the terror crawled up my spine. But the screen went black. "Leave," the voice rasped again, louder, more insistent, crawling from the walls themselves, rising from the very foundation of the station. I spun around, the flashlight shaking in my hand. The hallway stretched before me, its darkness like an open mouth, waiting to swallow me whole. But this time, I couldn't ignore it anymore. This time, I couldn't run. I wasn't alone. I never had been. The figure appeared in the doorway, the one I'd seen in the photos, the one I had only glimpsed in the shadows. It was tall, its form indistinct, more a presence than a shape. Its limbs stretched too long, its head tilted in a way that felt wrong. Its eyes, glowing red, pierced through the darkness like twin flames, searing into my soul. It didn't speak, but the air around it hummed with the weight of its intention. The very atmosphere felt thick, as if the station itself had become a living, breathing thing. "You knew," it whispered, its voice more of a breath than a sound. "You should never have come back." My breath hitched in my throat as I stumbled backward, my legs shaking beneath me. I tried to speak, tried to scream, but nothing came. The coldness, the dread, had seeped into my very bones. I was paralyzed by something deeper than fear, something primal. The knowledge that this thing, this force, had been here before me. And it was waiting for me to acknowledge it. I could feel the walls closing in. The floor beneath me felt as though it were tilting, the shadows stretching unnaturally. The whispers escalated, voices layering on top of each other, each one more desperate, more tortured than the last. They were everywhere, beneath the floorboards, above the ceiling, in the walls. "Help me," a voice rasped from somewhere close, too close. I spun around, my flashlight catching the pale, distorted face of a figure standing in the doorway of the storage room. It was the same figure that had appeared in the photos. Pale, gaunt, and twisted, its eyes wide with fear. It was another victim, just like me, trapped here in this nightmare. "No, no," I cried out, stepping toward the figure, but as I did, the room seemed to shift. The figure vanished, swallowed by the darkness. I slammed my back against the wall, the flashlight falling from my hands, the beam skittering across the floor like a lost animal. The temperature dropped again, colder than I had ever felt it before. The breath on my skin turned to frost, my fingers numb, my teeth chattering uncontrollably. And then it came. A deep, guttural sound rumbled from the core of the station, a vibration that I felt in my chest, in my skull. It was the sound of something ancient awakening, of something vast and malevolent stirring beneath the earth, in the very foundation of this place. The walls groaned in agony, the metal bending and buckling as if the station were alive, struggling to contain whatever had been buried within it. "You are mine now," the voice echoed, stretching, distorting. It didn't come from any one place, but from everywhere. The ceiling, the walls, the very air. The floor beneath me trembled as though the station were being pulled downward, its foundation cracking. The shadows twisted and coiled, taking on shapes, distorted, terrifying shapes, that seemed to move with a mind of their own. Figures, shapes, beings from my nightmares, crawled from the corners of the room, stretching toward me with outstretched limbs, their eyes wide with hunger. I tried to run, but the station had become a maze. The walls shifted as I moved, bending and warping, forcing me into dead ends. The shadows seemed to follow me, chasing me, wrapping around me, suffocating me in their cold embrace. I stumbled through the hallways, every corner feeling like a trap, every breath like a scream locked in my throat. But it was no use. The whispers, the voices, the shadows, they were everywhere. They had always been here, waiting for me to find them. And now I had. In a desperate, futile attempt to escape, I burst into the control room once again, slamming the door behind me. The air inside was suffocating, thick with the stench of something rotting, something decayed. The monitor blinked back to life, the radar once again pulsing with its sickly green glow. But the green dot on the screen wasn't the same. It had multiplied, split into countless points, each one blinking in an erratic, chaotic pattern. I turned, but the figure was there again, its glowing eyes burning into me. It stepped forward, its movements slow and deliberate, and I could feel the weight of its presence, its hunger, its need to consume. The walls around me groaned, the room itself seeming to collapse inward, as if the very space I occupied was being consumed by something darker, something that had no place in this world. I could feel it now, the pull, the inevitability of what was to come. I couldn't fight it. I couldn't escape it. The room seemed to spin as the darkness took hold, swallowing me whole. The last thing I saw was the figure's face, its twisted, hollow smile stretching unnaturally wide. The last thing I heard was its voice, low, cold, and final. "You will never leave." And then nothing. Silence. In the stillness, the radar station remained, empty, cold, forgotten. Its hum, its whispers, its shadows were gone. The door, once locked, was open, the snow outside undisturbed, untouched. No sign of the terror that had consumed it. And somewhere, far away, a radio crackled to life. "There's something out there. It never leaves." The station waited. The radar station stood as it always had, silent, cold, abandoned. The wind, once howling through its twisted skeleton, had stilled, leaving only the eerie silence of isolation. The snow outside remained untouched, a pristine white blanket that concealed whatever horrors had unfolded within the station's walls. The world had moved on, but I hadn't. I thought I had escaped. I thought I had left behind whatever cursed thing had rooted itself in that place. But now, standing in the cold light of dawn, I knew the truth. I had not left it behind. It had followed me, burrowed itself into my mind like an infection, spreading through every thought, every waking moment. I couldn't escape it. I wasn't free. Not anymore. I was no longer the person I had been before. The world I had returned to felt distant, like a dream that I couldn't touch, couldn't connect with. I walked through the streets, my eyes blank, my thoughts lost to the place that no longer existed in any tangible form. The station had swallowed me whole, and now there was no returning to the life I had once known. My hands shook as I fumbled with my phone, pressing the screen to check for messages, for some sign of life beyond the terror I had endured. But there was nothing. The calls I had made from the station were unanswered. No one had been looking for me. Not that it mattered. No one had known where I was, and now no one would care. Except somewhere deep inside, I knew it wasn't just the station I had lost, it was my soul. That entity, that presence, had branded me. And it didn't matter how far I ran, or how much time passed. It was already inside me. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. The darkness had taken something from me, something I could never recover. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw it, its twisted, distorted face, those glowing red eyes that burned into my soul. It haunted me in the waking world too. The corners of my vision would flicker, and for a moment I would think I saw it there, lurking just beyond the reach of my sight, always watching. I began to hear the whispers again. At first, they were faint, soft murmurs that could have been mistaken for the wind or the rustling of leaves. But as time wore on, they grew louder. Closer. They spoke in riddles, in phrases I couldn't quite understand, and sometimes their words were a direct command. Come back. It's not over. I could feel it, the pull, the weight of whatever had inhabited the station, wrapping around me like an iron chain. I'd left the station, but the station had never left me. I wasn't sure what was worse, the station's haunting presence or the relentless, gnawing fear that came with knowing I had no control. It had me, and I had no choice but to accept it. It had marked me, sealed my fate with the echo of its whispers. I tried to ignore it. I tried to push forward, to pretend that the nightmare was over, that I was just another survivor of a freak accident, a temporary disturbance in the vastness of the world. I tried to laugh at the memory of the figures, the shadows, the whispers. I tried to convince myself that I had been imagining it all, that the isolation had gotten to me. But I couldn't. The memory was too vivid. The presence too real. It was everywhere I went. One night, as I sat alone in my apartment, the silence too thick to bear, I heard it again. The voice. It watches. You are not alone. I froze. It was so clear now, as if it was right beside me. A cold chill swept across the room, the air growing heavy, thick with the same weight I had felt at the station. My hands trembled as I stood up, my heart hammering in my chest. I wasn't sure what I expected. I didn't know if I thought the door would burst open, or if I thought I would see it standing in front of me, like some nightmare I couldn't wake from. But there was nothing. No figure. No shadows stretching across the walls. Only the oppressive stillness, as if everything were holding its breath. But then the walls whispered, "You can never leave." It was a voice I hadn't heard before, yet somehow I knew it. The same thing had spoken to me at the station. It had never let me go. It had always been there, lurking just beyond my sight, just out of reach. I ran. I ran from the apartment. I ran from the city. I ran as far as I could. I thought for a fleeting moment that if I just kept running, if I could just outrun it, I might finally be free. But I knew, deep down, that there was no escaping it. No matter where I went, it would follow. It was in me just as it was in that station. I reached the edge of the city, the familiar skyline growing smaller in the distance. I found myself standing in front of the train station, the one I had seen 1,000 times before. I could see the lights of the station flickering in the distance, a cold, hollow glow. The hum of the trains, the low, mechanical sounds of the engines, seemed oddly comforting. For a moment, I wondered if I had been imagining everything. Maybe it was just my mind, unraveling from the isolation, from the fear. But then the whisper came again. This time it was louder, sharper. "You're already here." I looked around, scanning the shadows, trying to see where it was coming from. But there was nothing. Nothing but the empty train station, the silent tracks, and the ever-present suffocating cold. "You're already here. Forever." I collapsed to my knees, the ground beneath me trembling as the whispers grew louder. The walls of the station seemed to close in around me, the shadows pressing against my skin. The echo of the radar station's hum, the sound I had heard so many times before, began to reverberate in my ears. It was the same. It was always the same. I was back. I had never left. The station had followed me, and now there was no escaping it. The darkness that had once been confined to that isolated outpost had stretched across time, across space. It had seeped into the world, into my very being. The truth was undeniable. There was no escaping the station. There was no escaping the curse. I was part of it now, and it would never let me go. Somewhere, deep within the forest, the radar station stood in silence once again. The snow continued to fall, untouched by time. The cold wind whispered through the broken windows, the remnants of the past echoing in the walls. And somewhere within that silence, the radar continued to scan the horizon. Forever.